My daughter's boyfriend kept bragging about his job interviews. I handed him a fake resume with my number as his reference. When Alia first introduced me to Mark, I didn't dislike him immediately, but within the first 30 minutes of our family dinner, I'd heard enough about his Stanford MBA, his legendary internship at Goldman Sachs, and the bidding war happening over his talents to last a lifetime. My daughter smiled proudly at him across the table. At 24, she was still finding her own path, working 2 jobs while figuring out her passion. Meanwhile, Mark couldn't stop talking about the executive positions he was considering. Boeing's Preems called me personally yesterday, he announced, cutting into his steak, but I am not sure their compensation package is competitive enough. I nodded politely, catching my wife's subtle eye roll. I've been in corporate HR for 25 years. Something about his stories didn't add up. The following week, Mark joined us for Sunday breakfast. Alizé mentioned she'd picked up extra weekend shifts at the coffee shop. That's great, babe, but you won't need to do that much longer, Mark said, patting her hand. Once I decide between these director positions, we'll be set. Which companies are you considering again? I asked casually. He rattled off 5 prestigious firms, adding, they keep calling daily, my references can barely keep up. At night after they left, I sat at my computer. A quick seat and search showed Mark had graduated from State University last year, not Stanford. His only listed experience was a summer internship at a local bank. I didn't tell Azah what I'd found. She wouldn't believe me over him. I needed a different approach. The next time Mark came over, I waited until Azaz went upstairs to get photos from a recent trip. Mark, I heard you were still interviewing, I said, pulling a professional-looking document from my briefcase. I drafted a stronger resume format that might help you land these executive roles faster. His eyes widened as I slid the paper across the table. It was a perfectly crafted executive resume, listing all the impressive companies and positions he'd claimed to be interviewing for. At the bottom were 2 references, his current boss and a former supervisor. Both phone numbers were mine. Wow, this is really professional, he said, genuinely impressed. Use it for your next interviews, I suggested. I found this format gets better responses. 3 days later, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I answered, using the name of the supervisor I'd listed. Hello, this is James Williams from Deloitte calling about Mark Stevens, said a professional voice. He's interviewing for a junior analyst position and listed you as a reference. Junior analyst, not director. I paused, then said I'd be happy to provide a reference. Over the next 2 weeks, I received 6 similar calls, all for entry-level positions. None for executive roles at Friday dinner. Mark was unusually quiet. Alias looked concerned. Everything okay? I asked him. Some confusion with my job prospects, he mumbled. Oh, I reached for the salt. Anything I can help with? He looked at me strangely, then shook his head. The following Tuesday, Aliza called me crying. She'd discovered Mark had been lying about his education and job opportunities. When confronted, he'd admitted everything. How could he do this, Dad? She sobbed. I believed in him. I drove over to comfort her, bringing her favorite ice cream. As we sat on her apartment steps, she asked, how did you know? Did you suspect something? I just shrugged. I've interviewed thousands of people, sweetheart. The ones who talk the biggest game usually have the smallest resumes. She's dating someone new now. He's a mechanic who works 60-hour weeks and never brags about anything. When I asked about his career goals, he said, I am taking night classes in engineering. It's a long road, but I'll get there. I believe him and I won't be making him any resumes.